Happy engineer. What's up? Zach here. It's just you and me today, and I want to share with you one of the most powerful skills you can possibly develop for radical results and growth in your career, but also in any area of your life over the long term. Now, at the time of recording this, it is early January of 2023. And when this releases for you to hear, statistically speaking, approximately 83% of you will have already broken one or more of your New Year's resolutions. Now, full disclosure, I did not run a statistically valid study for that 83%. That's an aggregation of a few data points I found online, so I had to, out of data integrity, the engineer in me, let you know that I can't vouch for that number exactly, but you've probably had that experience or have people in your life who set out in January of 2023 to change their life, new year, new you, and have not lived up to the task. So, what is the skill I'm talking about? It is building habits. Why do people fail at New Year's resolutions? It's because they don't understand habits, or rather, they simply don't understand how the mind works. So I want to share with you a couple of really key points on this topic and what has helped me and my clients to get an X factor of huge results in their careers. So first, let me take you back to January of 2011. In January 2011, I was in grad school getting my master's in mechanical engineering at the University of Michigan, and I had already been there for a semester, and no surprise, the fall semester of 2010, I gained some weight, got a little soft around the edges. I'd spent a lot of time in the library, in class. I stopped working out. I was eating more unhealthy foods, drinking more pop and Red Bull, those kinds of things. So a lot had really fallen off the tracks in my health and nutrition. So I came into January with a goal, not a resolution, a goal, of course. There's a big difference, and I was really intentional. This is a goal. This is not a resolution. What I had set out to do was to run a mile 5 days a week, do that 50 weeks of the year. So my goal was to run 250 miles in that year, 2011. And I was serious. I went out and bought a new pair of running shoes and got all excited about this big goal that I had set. And as most people do, that first week of January, I found my way onto the track at the University of Michigan gym. I ran outside in the cold weather, and I hit my goal of 5 miles that first week of the year. You can imagine where the story goes. Second week, things got a little busier with classes. I missed a couple of runs, and I made up for it by running 3 miles on Saturday. No big deal. I still hit my goal of 5 miles for the week, and I am on track. Well, week 3 got even busier, got out of the habit, didn't run, didn't feel like making up all that time on Saturday because I had so many hours of studying and work to do. And by the end of January 2011, those running shoes were in the closet, and I was so focused on simply finishing my project work and getting that master's degree that it was like the goal never existed. Now, you can say, I just didn't have enough desire to get it back in shape, or it really wasn't a priority for me. Lots of things could be said, but here's the bottom line. I didn't design a habit or a system in my life that would set me up for success. Think about activities and behaviors like this. There's a spectrum. I think of it in 4 different levels, but level 1 is a new behavior. It's something that you haven't actually done before. You have not spent any time mastering that activity. It is new. That's level 1. It's a new activity. So for me, in January 2011, running was a new activity. It was a level 1 activity. I had not been doing any running prior to that. Level 2 is when you do something once in a while by choice. It's driven by willpower. It's something where you have a block of open time and you say, what do I want to do now? I guess I'll go for a run. You throw on the shoes and do it. That's like a level 2 behavior. It's something that you do once in a while, but it's by a conscious choice. Level 3 is when you do something often as a habit. It actually becomes a habit in your life. And level 4 is when you do something automatically and often as a lifestyle or an identity. And I think of that as even further than habit building. This is the part of you that's so ingrained that you're going to do it no matter what happens. Whereas you may have the experience where you've successfully built a habit in your life, but something changes in your schedule or your environment, or you lose the habit for a period of time because you get sick or something changes, and then you have to go back to rebuilding that habit again. Whereas things that are truly in our core identity and lifestyle come back on their own. That's how I distinguish those two. So here's the truth. When I had that goal in 2011, I never got beyond level 2. It was a new activity, and I got to the point where I was doing it once in a while by choice, but I never actually built the habit. So what is a habit? Well, let's break it down really simply. Google says that a habit is a settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up. That's interesting, but here's what I say as a lifestyle engineer. Habits are a strategic mechanism of the brain designed to remove the conscious mind from decision-making and conserve energy. Let me read that again. Lifestyle engineering's definition of a habit is that we want to leverage this strategic mechanism of the brain designed to remove the conscious mind from decision-making and conserve energy. And I think the model that's presented by Charles Duhigg in The Power of Habit is my favorite. It's one of the best. A habit contains 3 components: the cue or the trigger, the routine, or what we would typically refer to as the habit itself, and the reward, whether that's a literal physical reward or simply a psychological one. It's the benefit that we receive immediately and or over the long term of executing that routine. And as you go through that habit loop over and over and over, the winning of the reward creates in us a craving. And that's where dopamine and the neurotransmitters of our brain come into play. We don't have time today to dig into all that detail, but cue, routine, reward, and by doing it over and over, we begin to develop cravings that accelerate the pace of that habit loop. So that's the core structure of a habit. And really quick sidebar, I will highly, highly recommend 3 books about habits that you can get if you want what I believe is all you'll need to know about habits and habit building to change your life forever. It lives inside of 3 books. The first one I just mentioned, it's The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. The second one is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And the third is Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg. I think these 3 gentlemen have produced what is the best written work about habits that there is. So go pick up those 3 books if you want to master this area. So cue, routine, reward. Well, here's what you need to know. Designing good habits, even after you know intellectually what a habit is and how the habit loop works, habits are a skill. Habits are something that you design, all right? And if you don't begin to practice designing them, you won't improve. So how do you design a good habit? Here's the way that I coach my engineering leaders that I work with exactly how to do this. So this is the same process that I share with them in our paid program. Number 1, we always start with results, the results that you want to create. Too often, the starting point of a habit is simply the process or the habit itself. You begin with, I want to run 250 miles. Well, that's not actually the result that you want, right? That's not the result that I wanted. The reason that I wanted to run was something entirely different, right? It was to have more energy. It was to get in shape. It was to feel good about my body. It was to sleep better. It was so I would stop gaining weight. I would lose weight and get healthy. So start with the results you want to create, because designing habits is to achieve an outcome, not just to execute a process. All right. Once we know those results, then we can design the routine. What actions or what we would traditionally call the habit, what are the actions and behaviors, the routine that I must follow in order to get the results that I want? And this is an important part of the design process because there's often a lot of different solutions. So I want you to get curious and explore what are the different ways that I could achieve the outcome. All right, it's important that you actually ask yourself which one of those is most aligned with my passions, my values, my interests, most likely to fit within the constraints of my time, my travel, my work, my family. Designing the routine is an important part of the process. Then we need to determine the cue. What is that trigger? What's the thing that actually sets the habit in motion? And this is, again, a really important design problem to solve. What's the cue? It could be something around time, something around place. It might be visual. It might be a sound. It could be related to your other senses. It could be something emotional. You can use technology. You can make it analog. There's a lot of ways to do this, but you need to determine the cue and stick with that same cue every single time. Really big failure mode of habit building is when you have 5 or 6 different cues that you're attempting to use to trigger the same routine. Then get the reward clear and amplify it. Focus on both long-term and short-term rewards. Reward yourself in the moment, but also reward yourself by focusing on your vision and goals, using positive emotion to celebrate and imagining how this habit is going to change your life going forward. And the final piece is then we get started and we execute the habit the first time using our willpower. Now, you might pause right there and say, wait a minute, Zach, I thought the whole point of this and your definition of habit earlier was to get away from needing to rely on willpower and the conscious mind, and we're doing this to conserve energy and decision making. Yep, that's right. But to get started, willpower is where we begin. You must use willpower to get yourself into that routine. Now, remember, you still want to use the trigger or cue that you've designed. So just because willpower is involved doesn't mean that we leave out the cue at the beginning. So going back to the running story, I failed to build a habit here because there was no consistent cue, no consistent trigger. I just said, sometime throughout the week, I'll block out an hour, strap on my shoes, stretch, go for a run, take a shower, get back to work. Well, sometime when I'm free for an hour is not a consistent trigger. And as you know, in grad school, for those of you who've been there, and even if you only have done undergrad, it doesn't matter. The point being, it's unpredictable. Classes happen at all different times. Group projects have meetings at all different times. There was no consistency to the trigger. So that is why we want to be intentional when you're using willpower at the beginning, not to neglect that cue, that trigger. All right, enough of the mechanics here. Let me share with you one final thing before I let you get off to the races in designing real habits and systems in your life for 2023. Here it is. One of the most powerful, most transformational things that you can do in your life to create massive results, massive growth, is to replace a bad habit with a good one. Replace a bad habit with a good one. This by itself has so much impact because not only are you eliminating a behavior that's holding you back in life, but then you're adding a behavior that's moving you forward, so the amplification is tremendous. I would encourage you today, take this action. Sit down and take an inventory of any bad habits in your life. Be honest with yourself. Think about your health. Think about your mindset. Think about your faith or your spiritual life. Think about your family. Think about work, the way you engage with colleagues, the way you manage your time, the way you manage your energy. All right? Think about these things. What are your bad habits that you need to break? Then use this awareness and understanding of habits to go understand, well, what are the cues for these habits that I could eliminate? All right, what are the things happening here that I can now undo what's going on? And to replace a bad habit with a good one, here's what I want you to know. First, you must identify what that habit is you need to break. Isolate the cue or the trigger for that bad habit, design a new habit, and then here's the X factor. If possible, use the same cue that used to trigger your bad habit and instead plug in your new routine, your new habit, and make sure that you amplify with an even bigger reward at the beginning. So it's going to still take willpower. It's going to be difficult at the beginning. But if you'll take that same cue, whatever used to trigger you to do something that was not serving you, and you'll replace the routine with one of your new good habits off of that same trigger, this is such a powerful X factor for success at replacing bad habits with good ones, because now the thing that used to send you into that negative habit spiral is now sending you into a positive one, and it makes it so much easier to never go back to the bad habit again. Now, it's not always possible to do this, but when you can, it is really, really powerful. If you can't replace the new habit in that same cue, do your best to eliminate the cues for bad habits that you want to drop. Figure out what's creating that and eliminate the cue from your life. All right. I hope this helps you. And I'll just tell you really quick how I approached exercise differently after I discovered all of what we just talked about. I think it was 2014 when I set an additional goal around fitness in my life. And instead of just buying running shoes and strapping them on and going for it, here's what I did. The first week of the year, I woke up at the same time that I had been waking up the previous year. But instead of getting ready for work at home, all I did was drive to the gym and get dressed and ready for work at the gym locker room. Talk about hysterical. All I did was drive over there to get ready for work. All right, I put on my gym clothes at home, but then I drove to the gym and didn't even work out. All I did was get ready for work. Then the second week, I got up 15 minutes earlier. I drove to the gym and all I did was stretch for a little bit. I got on a treadmill for 5 minutes, I stretched a little, and then got ready for work. That was it. Then in the third week, I got up 1 hour earlier, went to the gym, did a short, easy workout, not too stressful, and then got ready for work, went to work. And the fourth week in, I got up an hour and a half earlier, went to the gym and started working out hard, attending classes, and got into a whole new pattern and routine. Totally different approach. I set up a consistent rhythm. I built triggers. I didn't bite off more than I could chew all at one time. I applied all the skills of habit building. I designed a habit that would fit into my life. And I maintained that rhythm of working out before work as an engineer all the way up until I left my career at Whirlpool. So this is an X factor. It's hugely valuable for you. And like I said, everybody needs to know how to do this if you want to maximize productivity in your career and life. So I'll challenge you to get out there, go build great habits. And then when you've mastered this, we can talk in another time about what it means to create a lifestyle. Hey, keep going out there, crush comfort, create courage, and let's do this.